My name is Jason Farber, and I'm an assistant principal here at Los Alamitos High School. I'm over academics, and I work really closely with all of our amazing counselors. Thank you for being here tonight for the first of several in our college mini-series sessions. If you did not get a goldenrod flyer on your way in, please make sure you grab one on your way out. Your senior student also received one at our senior summit, I think it was last week, and it lists all the dates and topics of our evenings that run through February of this school year. I have a 7th grader in the district, and I'm anxiously either awaiting or dreading, I haven't decided yet, the college application process. But I know I'm really thankful that we have such a great team here at the high school that can help you and your student through all the different layers that go into figuring out, picking a course of action, and then following through on that. And with that, I'm going to invite up Mrs. Christy Ricks, one of our counselors, to give a brief overview of the evening and our guest speaker.
Hi everyone. It's my pleasure to introduce Mr. Paul Kanarek tonight. Our speaker comes to us with a wealth of valuable information. He was the co-founder of the Princeton Review and one of the most successful educational startups in the country. After spending 25 years at Princeton Review, Paul transitioned to being a managing partner at CollegeWise, which is America's largest college admissions company. Paul has been a close friend of Los Alamitos for many years, and we are truly thankful for his time, knowledge, and sense of humor. We're really happy he's here tonight. He has some great information, and I hope you all brought pens to make notes on the back of the yellow paper if you didn't bring any paper. And here's Mr. Paul Kanarek.
Good evening. This is a different presentation for me. In fact, it's one I've only ever given once before, which was last year at Los Alamitos High School. And it's also my first presentation of the school year, so I am horribly out of shape. My guess is my voice will sort of fade into oblivion in about 45 minutes. This is designed to teach. You know, when I spoke to you as juniors, a lot of that was sort of big picture stuff, but now that you're seniors, this is designed to be mechanical and advice oriented. And there's quite a lot that I hope to get through, but I will pause every now and again to check in and invite questions, because I want to make sure that you're sort of getting where we're going. What we're going to talk about, you know, what does it take to be successful in the large state schools in California? Because there's a very particular kind of student who does well, and then there's the kind of student who does not do well in those schools, and you probably want to have a sense of which one you are. You kind of want to have a sense of what to do with your lists, because putting together a college list is sort of an art form, and I want to make sure that you're thinking about that. There's some questions that people had, a lot around early admissions decisions, community colleges. I plan to address those. I'll dive into letters of recommendation. I'll touch briefly upon the essay, but you have a really good essay speaker coming in a couple of weeks. I know her, she's got great energy, she knows a lot about this, and she will really sort of help guide you about what works and doesn't in college essays, so I won't spend much time there. We'll talk a little bit about the activities section of the application, because like seemingly everyone screws that up, and I'd prefer it if you weren't everyone. And all throughout, we'll sort of talk and answer questions. Is that reasonable? When the formal presentation is done, anyone who wishes to flee can do so. And then I'll hang around and answer any questions that you have that are, you know, more oriented towards you, and we'll do that for a while. So that's sort of the layout, and I've got like a fancy gizmo. That maybe, yep, there it is. Okay, the piece is up there, and I don't read slides at people, and you don't need to make copious notes, because I'll email this deck to anyone who wants it, right? So these are the 4 things that are simply on every application. These are things that are common, that you should be aware of, and astonishingly, people screw up number 4 all the time. I mean, it sounds simple, but let me give you the example where people mess this up. If they say, we don't want letter of recommendations, and you send one, You just annoy them. And, you know, word to the wise, annoying admissions officers, generally not in your favor. If they say we want 2 letters of recommendation and one of them needs to be from a left-handed person and the other one has to be in French, you do that. And there are schools that are really, really particular in their set of directions because it is simply something that they care about. The one thing I want to level set, Mr. Farber, when he came up, was like, I have a 7th grader. I don't know what level of anxiety and terror to bring to admissions. The answer is easy. None. In a twisted way, this is a joyful process. It doesn't feel that way, ergo the use of the word twisted. But think about it. You are now engaged in the process where you get to determine where you're going to go next, where you're going to live, and as parents, in a weird way, we finally get rid of them in a fashion that is palatable and doesn't involve jail. So to me, that's kind of a lot of joy. It's just there's a lot of mechanics that we're going to flow through on the way. I promised to talk about UCs and Cal States, and they're different versions of the same animal. First thing to understand, the focus of the University of California is to prepare people for professional careers and ideally get you to go to graduate school. So for example, accounting is not really a UC major. Accounting is a Cal State major because that's more career-oriented. Zoology is not a Cal State major. I swear I didn't mean to go from A to Z. That was entirely accidental. But the UC's like, you want to be a doctor? That's the UC's purview. Lawyer, UCs. In a weird way, business school, except that the UC schools, only 2 of them even offer a business major. Did you know that? Only 2 UC schools offer business as a major, Riverside and I believe Berkeley. And for both of them, you can't get into it until your junior year. So all the time you have people saying, I want to do business. Great. Possibly UC is not the best match for you. There's no marketing major at the UC level. That's always the purview of the Cal States. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So they sort of have different missions. Now, in your brains, you have pecking order. A, UCs, B, Cal States, C, community college. It's sort of hardwired into the brain, and I'd like to unwire that. Because I think when you evaluate this, let's say for some reason that you're really fascinated by wine, you shouldn't be at 17, but you really are. Well, the best wine programs, frankly, the best one is at Cal Poly San Luis Obispo. They have a phenomenal major around oenology, spell that. And then secondarily, Fresno State, of all places, has a great wine program, and they even make their own wine, which, by the way, is terrible, and has a screw cap. So clearly they're still learning. And Davis, UC Davis has a decent wine program. So the more you look at these things, you want to be a vet, that's a Davis major. Oh, most people get this wrong. Which UC school has the strongest track record of getting students into medical school? What's the obvious answer? UCLA and Berkeley, right? Because that's the pecking order. Berkeley and LA are the best. It's Irvine. Irvine overwhelmingly has the strongest track record of getting its graduates into medical school. That's sort of Irvine's thing. And in a weird way, the UC school that has the best track record for producing lawyers, and you would never expect this, is Santa Cruz. Yeah, it's sort of contraindicative of how you view the school. Now, Berkeley and LA are phenomenal institutions. I went to UCLA, and it was the greatest 6.5 years of my undergraduate life. Different story, different day. But, each school has something to offer, and what will probably happen is when you fill out the UC application, you'll just check a bunch of boxes and write a large check, because you view this as a pecking order. I wouldn't do that. I would look at the UC schools that fit your desired outcome, whatever that might be. And for some people in this room, that might simply be checking all the boxes, but I'd rather it be more cogent than that. Does that make sense? Number one, overwhelmingly, People who are successful in these schools are extroverted and self-starters. They don't care if you come to class. They won't check to see if you show up. In the larger UC schools, the average class size in large subjects the first couple of years is 500 to 600 people. Just very big lecture halls. The teaching in the main is, if you have a great professor, the teaching can be really good, but most of the teaching is done by teaching assistants. These are people getting their graduate degrees, and that sort of catch as catch can. On balance, the UCs aren't great teaching institutions. They're research institutions. Cal State, the teaching is better. The best teaching in the state system, and it's not even close, is at the community college level. Now, I'd like to ask you an obvious question, because you're close to me. The obvious question is good teaching important to you? And would you give the same answer? Also close to me? Yeah. Who would say no? Right. So, but to change the question slightly, you have a teacher who you really enjoy. You have a teacher who you absolutely cannot stand. Do you get the same grade? Same grade with both teachers, right? That person who, regardless of the quality of the teacher, still gets a good grade, is good teaching imperative to her? No, she gets a good grade regardless. It's just desirable. But if your answer is no, if I like the teacher, I get a good grade, and if I don't like the teacher, I don't get as good a grade, you got to be really cautious about attending a large California state school. Because good teaching is an integral part of your performance. And I know that's kind of a weird way of putting it, but you know yourself. You've got 4 years. You know how you react. And about half the people in this room, if the teacher is great, will get a better grade than if the teacher isn't. By the way, that's a very gender remark. Most frequently, women perform well regardless of the quality of the teacher, and men respond to how good the teacher is. I'm overly generalizing, but from the gender perspective, the guys are like, you do not amuse me. Thus, I will get a B- in your class to punish you. Very sort of male in its logic. What else do we have here? You have to be brave. It means you have to seek what the UC schools have to offer. I mean, you'll hear this all the time. The professors at the UC schools have office hours. They are required to have them. It is the loneliest hour of that professor's life. No one comes. You could probably have one-to-one instruction all 4 years at a UC school if you bothered to go to office hours. It's just people don't do it because they're like, what am I going to say to my professor? Showing up is the best moment of her day because no one comes. You got to look, what programs do I want to be involved in? What internships do I want? It's part of that extroversion piece. Quiet, passive women and men struggle more within the UC system. It doesn't reward passivity. It rewards aggressive behavior. Living on the campus is hugely important at almost any school, even more so at UCs and Cal States, because they are so big, it is so easy to get lost. When you're in a smaller college or university, so much of the focus is on creating and maintaining community. That's part of their shtick. The UCs, they don't care. That's not part of what they're there for. You're there to drive your own outcomes. So I wanted you to have that background about sort of what is and is not rewarded within the UCs. Now remember, I think that the University of California system and its sibling, the Cal States, are the single greatest educational state system on the planet. They are remarkable, they are just not necessarily for everyone. So I will pause. Who has any questions, comments, or disagreements? What do we got? Yeah.
What if you live here in college? Would you want to live on campus?
So let's say, for example, that I live really close to Cal State Long Beach, right? But I still want them to live on campus. Ideally, yes, because part of the experience is to live there. But to use my example, hardly anyone actually lives at Cal State Long Beach. It's kind of a commuter campus. So I think that's part of sort of what you think about. You know, many of the larger Cal State schools are commuter campuses, and I'm going to show you something in a couple of slides that will show you the pain of being a commuter campus. You'll see it in a second. What else? We will move forth. This matters. Now you'll hear all the time that schools are more than numbers. And the bulk of the time, schools are more than numbers. Yet consistently, when you deal with University of California admissions, there's a very, very negative correlation. And you'll notice, if I don't have at least a 4.0 on the weighted scale, my odds of getting into Berkeley are painfully bad. And most of those 1,100 people who they took was them filling out their sports teams. I don't tell you this to depress you. I tell you this so you can be informed. You have a 3.6. You don't have a jump shot. You're not that fast. When you swim, it's all about not drowning. And you want to apply to Berkeley because your parents went there. Knock yourself out. It's like I said earlier this year. Guys, it's not like dating. You go up to someone and say, will you go out with me? And they look at you like you're dirt and say, no, I would rather bleed internally. That is personal. You know how Berkeley says no? You have to log on to their website to hear the bad news. They didn't even bother sending an email anymore. There's no letter. So if you want to go for it, absolutely go for it. Just understand before you play the game, your 3.6 and no athletic ability means almost certainly you're going to hear no, and that is okay, because damn it, now is the time to go for it. Does that make sense? So GPA is hugely important within the UC admissions substructure. Questions? Go.
Okay, what if you had a 4.0, like except one semester? Which one counts?
The lady's question. Okay, I've had really good grades. One semester was kind of sort of ugly. Which ones count? The 2 semesters from your sophomore year and the 2 semesters from your junior year will be the 4 they use to evaluate. Your freshman year disaster they don't care about. And they will look at your senior first semester transcript if you're sort of on the border. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Do you have a follow-up?
Yeah.
Go.
So, would they consider me if I had one bad semester?
The lady's question. So, I have one bad semester. Will they consider me? They will look at your cumulative GPA over the 4 semesters, right? If your one bad semester takes your cumulative way, way down, you're probably on the wrong side of the math. But a private school would look very, very closely at your story, and they would go, look, the second semester sophomore year was bad. It turns out that, God forbid, her parents got divorced then. That kind of makes sense, ergo, and then she came back. There's always a reason. It's just the UC school won't look for the reason, and private schools will. Got it? You know, large state schools tend to have large, more unfeeling practices. Smaller private schools are far more interested in you holistically. It sort of passes the sniff test. I promised you this slide. Look at the 4-year graduation rates for those schools. Those are hideous. The 4-year graduation rate at Cal State Fullerton is 15%. The 4-year graduation rate at Cal State Long Beach is 10%. This is just math. What is happening? Here are the factors in play. 1, these schools are not appropriately resourced. It's really, really hard to get the classes you want. 2, people who go to these schools tend to come from families who have less wealth than people who go to UC schools. So the kids work. 3, very rarely are these kids living on campus. So they're not as tied in to the community. Kids who are not tied into the communities have lower graduation rates. 4, too many kids chasing too few spots. Now, Cal State schools aren't that cheap. That number on the far right is the total cost of tuition, room, and board. Now, if the kid's living at home, that $23,000 at Long Beach becomes like $12,000. That's still a lot of money for a kid not to graduate in 4 years. This is unassailable math. My job is to give you information to make informed choice. Does this mean you do not apply to a Cal State school? It does not mean you do not apply to a Cal State school. You absolutely apply, but it should be part of your decision matrix. And if you're sitting here saying, all I'm going to do is apply to Cal State schools, that's also fine, but you should be aware of this math. It's going to be almost impossible to graduate in 4 years, and it will have nothing to do with your drive and everything to do with the schedule that is available to you. That is a major thing to know. By the way, the 5-year graduation rates, they're slightly better. There are only 4 Cal State schools that have 6-year graduation rates over 50%. Only 4 of them. All right. That took the air out of the room. It's my gift. Questions over here? Go.
You were saying about sophomore and junior years. Some of the Cal States, though, include freshman year, correct?
The lady's question, do some of the Cal States include freshman year? Here's what I believe they do, madam. I believe they count the courses that you take, but not necessarily the grades you got in them. And I think the UCs are the same way. They look to say, what was your curriculum? So they can see, have you done 4 years of math and 3 years of Spanish? But I do not believe they care specifically about the grades. Go.
To your previous slide,
Mhm.
the 3.7 that I gave for that use, I think it was UC. Do your extracurriculars also count? Do they take a look at that? Does that matter at all?
So the lady's question. I don't have a 3.7 and I want to go to Davis. Will they look at my kid's story? Will they look at her extracurricular activities? Yes. Yes, they will. But the inherent bias is towards no rather than yes. The other way, the inherent bias is more towards yes rather than no. So I think it's just sort of the level setting of the brain. The kids with the 3.8s, oh, we're very interested in her. What else does she have? The kid with the 3.5, we're not as interested, but what else does she have? So I just think the psyche is different. You know, this is not pure math. If it was pure math, they wouldn't have you write essays. They wouldn't have you list activities. They wouldn't want to know your school background. They wouldn't want to know the income of your family. Those things all matter. This is aggregated math. So we look at Davis, right, which isn't really an athletic school. 1,300 kids got into Davis with GPAs of less than a 3.7. That means they're looking at stories. They're not irrelevant. It's not pure math. It's aggregated. I'll get you in a second. I should have started with this. Told you, I'm out of shape. Here's the good news. Guys, I've been tracking student outcomes since I started Princeton Review in 1983. And every year I ask students a question. Were you accepted to one of your top 3 choices for college? And the first time I asked this question, and I got the results, was in 1984, and 90% of the students told me they had been accepted into one of their top 3 choices for college. 1984. When your parents were young and alive, right? So now it's 2018, and we're all antiques. And this year I asked my students, were you accepted into one of your top 3 choices for college? And astonishingly, the answer from 90% of them was yes. You're going to get into one of your top 3 choices for college. That is the answer. I don't know which one of your top 3. But all of this agitas and pain and anxiety, it always ends the same way. Kids get into one of their top 3 choices because they're amazing kids. Coming from an amazing school who work their backsides off in AP everything. They get a reward. The outcome is terrific. Go. The numbers are from 2 years ago. The data tends to trail by 2 years. If I was to update it, it would be slightly worse. Because we're sort of on the rat race, but not aggressively worse. Anyone over here? Yeah.
So with online, I've heard a lot of online courses
You're talking about within Cal State? The lady's comment, she's heard that you can start to do blended learning in Cal States and do online courses. That is just starting to come into the flow. So this data always trails by 2 years. But if you look at it just from a big picture perspective, those are the 4-year graduation rates for private schools. Right? So if I can get a private school to give me a scholarship, I should take that, because I'm going to graduate, pay a similar amount of money, and have an extra year of my life. So I play the math game. I think the Cal States will improve. I think they have to improve. But even then, they're going to trail these guys by a lot. Go, you had a question.
Let's say you're not.
Go ahead.
Let's say you're not into everything. You have a very particular focus. Like, how do you get into a really good school that'll give you a name, but like be able to get into it?
Can I ask a follow-up question, and I'll repeat this? What is the focus that we're talking about?
I am not a major.
Pardon?
Design
Art and design.
with a minor in business.
Okay. So the question I got was, I have a thing that I love, art and design. I'm not in AP everything. I hate AP physics. It hates me. I'm a normal human with a passion for one thing, and I can sort of manage everything else. Just let me near my art. So the schools that you pick are going to love the person who you are, because your story is so uniquely yours. You're not going to apply to a school that doesn't love you the way you love your art. So I don't know what your art is. I don't know if it's on the computer side. I don't know if it's painting. I don't know if it's sculpture. But you're going to find the schools that salivate over your own sort of weird portfolio. They're not going to give a damn about your SAT scores. They're not bringing you in because you're good at tests. They're bringing you in because you're not good at tests, because you're an artist. But you'll never pick a school that values something differently. So, you want to look at what art is. I would, one school that comes to mind, it's kind of a weird one. Look at FIDM. Is it FIDM, F-I-D-M, in New York City. Just take a look at it. Look at all the schools that value your art and offer sort of a couple of business classes. They will love you because you're an angular kid. This is who I am, this is what I do. And like this whole thing is like you've got to be everything to everybody. Oh, hell no. You're a perfect candidate because you have a specific story to tell. It means putting your list together matters. Go, you've got one back there. The gentleman's question. The GPA, weighted or unweighted? Now, isn't that a simple question? Shouldn't I be able to give a yes/no answer? So the answer, sir, is it depends. At the UC and Cal State level, it is weighted for 8 semesters worth of AP and honors credit. So for example, if your kid took 16 semesters worth of APs and honors, from a weighting perspective, you will get the extra point for 8 of them. Private schools generally do not weight grades at all. They look at strength of curriculum. It's really hard for me to give a straight answer because all the systems do things differently. But here's something I can tell you. On your Los Alamitos High School transcript, there are 703 different GPAs, right? And psychologically, as parents, which one do we look at? Right, if there's 5 scales and one of them shows me weighing the least, that's the scale I use. If there's 8 GPAs, I am drawn to the highest possible number on my transcript. It's never right for colleges. What I would do, for example, in your case, sir, on your transcript, there should be potentially a UC GPA. If there isn't, look at the academic GPA. That's the one that's probably closest to your true GPA. Lots of people think they have 4.0s who do not. I'll say this again. UCs and Cal States compute your GPA based upon the extra point for 8 semesters worth of AP and honors credit. That's how the math works. Anyone over there? So far, so good. Yes?
Are those costs listed, are those dependent on the income of the family? That cost?
Thank you. The lady's question, these costs that are listed here on this, that's the full retail cost. That's full retail. If you qualify for financial aid, those costs are reduced. I won't go too deeply into financial aid because we have a night for that, but that assumes that someone has the money to pay the entire cost. That is the most you would pay for a Cal State school, right? All right, yes? Yeah. So this question is deeply complex. And it begins with, basically, we've got international kids coming into our state and taking our spots. And certainly true at private schools, right? So let's just look at the state. We don't have international kids saying, I want to go to San Jose. We don't have kids here saying, I want to go to San Jose, right? So really, what you have is, you have international kids chasing branded programs, which is Berkeley, LA, San Diego, and oddly enough, Santa Barbara, right? So those are the 4 schools. They are a separate bucket. They're not compared with the California kids. They're sort of competing with each other. So that's the answer to your question. But I also want to tell you something else. The state has chronically underfunded the UC system. Chronically. So we charge about $13,000 in tuition, but it costs $27,000 to educate a UC kid. So we lose $14,000 on every kid. And that gap is made up by state funding. Make sense so far? When the state underfunds, that means there's not enough to cover the gap. So for example, UCLA can bring in about 4,000 freshmen. But they only were given enough funding to bring in 3,000 freshmen. That's all they got. They've got 1,000 spots left. So here's what they learned. If they sell off 600 of those spots to international and out-of-state kids, they make a profit on every one of those kids because they charge 40 grand a piece. They use the profit from those kids to take another California kid. So they self-fund to fill the shortfall so they can take more California kids. And what's settled in now is sort of this self-privatization where about 20% of the kids at those schools are international or out of state, and that will be the number for the next 10 years. That's sort of the backstory to what is going on. Up here, private schools. Private schools do a much better job within 4-year graduation. Here is a piece of advice for everyone in here. Never cross a private school off your list because of the sticker price. Ever. Apply to schools that are on the list, that may seem to be $70,000, because it is quite possible that when you get to merit or financial need, they will offer you enough money that it is comparable to a UC school. Remember, applying to a college does not mean you have to attend the damn thing. It just means that you're sort of in the game. So private schools belong on your list. Do not run away because of the price point. Common questions. 1 and 2. So when I talk to the counselors in advance of this speech, all their pain is around 1 and 2. There is this growing belief, particularly in well-educated communities like yours, that you must apply to college using early programs. I'm probably not going to convince you otherwise. Here's what I do want to convince you. Be very sensible about where you choose to apply early. Sensible. For example, let's start at the ridiculous end. You are a legitimate candidate for Penn, an Ivy League school. You've got all of the chops, you've taken all of the classes, you have great extracurricular activities, you have 1460 on the SAT, you've taken AP everything, you got 5s in all of it, your uncle went there, like you're a good athlete, you check all of the boxes. And you really, really, really want to go to Penn. There is no doubt. That kid is well served by applying early decision to Penn. Early decision is entirely binding. If they take you, you have to go. You must withdraw all other applications. They've got you, so you have to know you're going to go there. Did that explanation make sense?
Yes.
You're an ordinary student. You're okay. You are accomplished, but you're not magnificent in that epic way. And you say, I'm going to apply to Penn early decision because they take a larger number of kids early decision than they do regular, which is true. You know what happens to that kid? He just gets rejected faster. And you wasted the early application approach. You wasted it. You want to use early in a surgical way. It is the most strategic decision that you make. Where am I a good fit? Where applying early elevates my odds of getting into a place that I care about. That is a deeply strategic decision. And if you truly don't know where you want to go to school yet, don't apply early anywhere. You're not serving your interests, you're increasing your stress level, you're putting more stress into the system because you don't know where you want to go. Early decision, binding, you must go. Early action, not binding. If they admit you, you don't have to go. You can only apply to one early decision program. You can apply to multiple early action programs. You can apply early action and early decision, but if the early decision people take you, you have to withdraw all of your early actions. You with me? Early programs are not about the kid. Early programs are not about you and you and you. It's not about you at all. It's about the schools. It's about the schools trying to grab the candidates and the athletes who they want. It's not about the students. It's about the institution. This decision, done properly, should be made by you in May of your senior year, with all of the necessary time to think about it. Early programs take that choice away from you and they give it to the colleges. That's the dance with the devil. The payback, the admit rates are much higher when you apply early. Do you see the play? Also, you go early decision to some place and they've got you, how generous do they need to be with money? So if you go early decision, you have to know that you want to go there and you can afford it. This is the dance with the devil. Now, most CollegeWise students have at least one school to which they apply early, but they've been working on their lists for a year. If you're sort of coming to the stage, eyes wide open, sort of saying, where am I going to apply to college? It's generally not a good idea to apply early. It's not strategic enough. Now, that is a very big topic. So I'll start here. Who's got a question? Middle. This side. Back. Anyone over here? I either stunned you into oblivion with my magnificent verbal prose, or you've got it. Next question. Major. I get asked this question all the time. Is it bad if I don't pick a major for college? What's wrong with that question? It's fear-based. How am I going to be punished or beaten if I do this thing wrong? I don't take that approach. There's no bad or good per se. Most of the time, colleges expect that you have absolutely no idea what you want to major in or what you want to be, and whatever you tell them today is a lie and you're going to change your mind anyway. Almost everyone changes their major once or twice, and the parents in this room know how true this is. So the number one major in the UC system is undeclared. So it's perfectly fine to not know what you want to be. There are exceptions. San Luis Obispo requires people to declare a major before they come. But mainly, pick what you want. Exceptions. You want to be an engineer. You want to be a computer scientist because you don't like the sun and you never want to see it again. Those programs are more difficult to get into, so you must declare as that major in advance because it's a harder road to hoe. If you want to be an engineer at a UC school, you have to have higher grades, higher test scores, and harder classes. But you can't fake it. You can't go undecided and move into engineering. They won't let you. It's boom or bust, right? Some UC schools, if you reach for engineering and they can't take you, might come back and say, we can't offer you a slot in engineering, but we can give you undecided in letters and sciences. Some schools do that, some schools do not. Here's the other place where major matters. And it's your story, the art story. Everything I am is about art. All of my weird peccadillos are around art. There are things on the floor and the ceiling of my room that barely qualify as art, but they are there. And the more you talk about art and the more passion you have for art, the more you tell your story, and you are an art major, that's hugely advantageous in the admissions process because you have lived your story. That's the other place where major matters. When your major is a natural extension of the way you have chosen to live your life, then it works. Everyone else, pretty much undecided. Questions, comments, disagreements, go. Yeah?
So if it's a state school and it's every major is impacted, does it make sense to, if you do not have a major you're declaring, does it make sense to know how much more one major is impacted over the other? Can you make that choice?
The question is, you're applying to UCLA. Every major is impacted at UCLA. So should I pick a major that's less impacted than another major to sort of try and backdoor the system? Here's the challenge. They're really adept at looking at the major you pick versus the story. So you decide to be a forestry major, because that's actually not impacted, and you couldn't spell tree. And you live in an urban jungle, and you never got to camp, and you weren't a national park ranger volunteer, and you didn't even take biology to study botany. Like, no part of your story fits your major, they'll just laugh at you. So impacted schools, they're harder to get into when you're applying to the crazy majors like engineering and computer science. And for every other major, you saw the numbers. Give me a 4.0, right? So I think that's the answer to that particular question. Yeah?
Would a college prefer, like, okay, what if a college had two choices? Someone that had a major and someone who was undeclared? Would they choose the one that had a major?
The question is another kind of fear-based one. Candidate A, I know what I want to do. Candidate B, I'm clueless. Everything else is the same. Would they pick one over the other? No. They'll pick the kid who they think will be better and happier in their school. Now, you could make the argument that the kid with the major has a really good story that fits the culture of the school. You could make the argument the kid with no major has I don't know what I want to do. I am part scientist, I am part linguist, I am part mathematician, I'm all foodie. Right? So it's really all about the story and do they see you being successful in their school? And that, when you asked earlier about extracurriculars, it's only about one question. Do I want this person as my roommate? That's all it is. You know, when you do a job interview, they're not checking your credentials. They're like, do you fit the culture of this place? Are you weird enough to be happy here? You know, when you hire people, you're hiring them based upon do you like them? Not based upon sort of other sort of objective factors. And that's what all of the essays and the extracurriculars and the interviews, they're all about, is this my roommate? That's all it is. So I've done 3, I've done 4 community colleges. Yeah? Yeah.
If you think you want to be an engineer and you're almost 100% sure, and you said the UCs want you to declare that, and they'll hold you to that?
The lady's question. I'm pretty sure my kid wants to be an engineer. So she applies as an engineer. She's accepted as an engineer. Does she have to stay an engineer? No. You can always, I'm using the wrong expression here, but you can always downgrade. You can always move from a more competitive major to a less competitive major. They'll always let you slip away from crazy. It's just hard to get into crazy. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Lady, then gentlemen, go.
If you're not 100% sure what you want your major to be, are you better off doing a
Thank you. Like most kids, I'm not sure I want to be. Are you better off going undecided? Generally, yes. If you think about it, the first 2 years of college are pretty general ed. There's sort of a similar do what you want. It's perfectly okay to go undeclared. Now, sometimes colleges have various schools, School of Arts, schools of letter and sciences, so I'll generally pick a large category to be undecided in. But I don't have to say what my major is. I'm sort of artsy, so I'll be undecided in the School of Arts. Or I'm sort of sciencey, so I'll be undecided in the School of Letters and Sciences. Or I'm utterly undecided, so I'm just going to be undecided. Totally fine. Go.
What was the, I know like early decision was like binding, so that was kind of far. What was wrong with early action?
So the gentleman's question, early decision is binding. What is wrong with early action? There's nothing wrong with early action other than the fact it forces you to do certain things. 1, get letters of recommendation earlier. 2, do your essays earlier. 3, get on the rat race earlier. 4, engage in the stressful no or yes decision earlier because they'll let you know by Christmas. I don't think that is in your best interest to force this pressure upon you earlier. But if you're willing to embrace that, early action is more student-friendly than is early decision. But remember, this is all about meeting institutional needs. Yeah?
Okay, so would it be better to go to community college for 2 years, get general ed out of the way, and go to the college that may love you, or is it best to go to the college that loves you and then just pay all the money and for the general ed?
Segue alert. The question. Which one should I pick? Go to community college, get the general ed out of the way, and then go to a school that loves me? Or go to the school that loves me from the very, very beginning and pay the freight? That's actually a question I can answer. Always go to the school that you love that loves you back from the very beginning. It's just a rare answer. That's really, really unusual to have happen. Because most people don't know enough about the school to know whether they're in love or not. So given the very specific question you asked me, when we're in love, just go for it. There's a philosophy there somewhere. But you also provide a segue to community college. And here I'm going to repeat something I said earlier this year. LaSalle parents, LaSalle students say 2 things about community college that are equally wrong. No child of mine is going to Golden West. That place is like high school, but it has ashtrays. The ego play. I am not sending my child to junior college, right? Or equally badly. It doesn't matter what I do at LaSalle, I'm just going to community college anyway. Those are both horribly flawed premises. Now, you're at the stage where I strongly recommend, regardless of your personal story, that every single woman and man in this room apply to 4-year schools. Every one of you. Because not to removes the power of choice. So you apply to 4-year schools, every one of you. By April of next year, you will have choice in front of you, and it's a choice that she articulated. Do I love anyone that I want to go there? Can I afford to go to the places that have taken me? Am I excited about these possibilities? Are any of these the right combination of place and price? Now you have a choice, because you can choose no. So here's the thing. Community colleges are amazing at teaching. Class sizes are small. They're unbelievably inexpensive. You know, I joked earlier about being at UCLA for 6.5 years. It's because I flunked out my freshman year. I had a 0.86 GPA. Less than 1. Remember when I said, you gotta be brave? You gotta be a self-starter? That they don't care whether you go to school or not? They didn't, so I didn't. I went to community college for 2 years. It saved my life academically. It was the best teaching I ever got in college. I'm a huge fan of community college with a plan. So here's how community college works. It's May of your senior year. You're looking at the panoply of schools that said yes. None of them work for you. You march down to the community college, you meet with the counselor, and you sign the guaranteed transfer programs. Sometimes they're called the articulation agreements. The transfer rate for people who sign those documents is over 90%. The transfer rate for people who do not is less than 5%. Because the kid who signs it has a plan, gets first call on all the classes, gets to be sort of shepherded through the process. The kid who does not sign it is just floating and never gets out. That is the key moment, and that is the power of choice and articulated thinking. That begins with you deciding to apply to four-year schools now. That whole thing is form following function. All right, who wants to argue? I love arguing. Sometimes it's called the Guarantee Transfer Program. Sometimes so it's called the Articulation Agreement, Articulation. Every school has one. It's a contract between you and the school. The plus side of the contract is you will always get first dibs on the classes. They will get, yes, go ahead.
Obviously, so like community colleges are going to take the AP classes in terms of like the college credit for sure, like in terms of their taking like
The gentleman's question, will the community colleges give you credit for your AP classes? Yes. What is interesting there is it's less about the credit and more about giving you options in terms of what courses to take. So you took AP US History, they don't make you take History for Dummies. You can accelerate, right? Generally speaking, you're going to complete 2 years at a community college before you transfer. It's not 100% that way, but generally speaking, that's how it is set up. Yeah?
Okay. How does choosing or not choosing a major affect your classes?
How does choosing or not choosing a major affect your classes? At most universities, it does not, because at most universities, the first 2 years, you're doing general ed. Right? Now, there are exceptions based upon schools. By the way, here's a really, really important thing to look at when you apply to colleges. See if they're on the quarter system or the semester system. Semester system you're used to. Quarter system is academics on steroids. That's ER kind of stuff. Quarter system, everything's done in 9 weeks. Like you show up, you sneeze, there's a midterm. Like if you're an adrenaline junkie, easily bored, quarter system's awesome. Always moving, always moving, always moving. But it's more stressful than what you're used to. Like you better know if you're marching into a quarter system as hello nurse. You know, the UC schools, UCLA's quarter system. You better know that. There's also one other kind of program that you might like. It's called a 414. Semester, a month, semester. In the month, you take one class. And it's the only class that you take. And it's usually deeply experiential and kind of cool. So you've got quarter, semester, and 414. Always know what the teaching style is. That matters to you. All right. Yeah. Go ahead. The question is, do elite schools look down on community colleges? Well, I'll answer it this way. When kids drop out, and they always do, where do you think they fill up from? The 10 kids who don't go to Harvard between their sophomore and junior year are replaced out of the community college ranks. They don't look down on that at all. It's a perfect place for them to go and get diversity. The lady's question, she heard that if you go to community college for 2 years, it is easier to transfer to other colleges. As with everything in universities, that's partially right and partially wrong. It is never easy to get into Stanford. Like, you think they want you to donate a kidney, but it was a liver year. It's never easy, right? Within the pantheon, it is certainly less crazy to get into Berkeley coming out of the community college ranks than it is coming out of high school. Right? You want to get into Berkeley as a high schooler? It's 4.24 GPA, average SAT scores of 1440, 22 semesters of AP and honors credits, and you're firstborn. You go to Coast, and you transfer out, probably a 3.7, 3.8, no SATs required. So totally different, right? They set it up to reward you in the UC system to go to community college. But the elite private schools, no, equally impossible. Yeah.
If you apply for early action and they require the letter of rec, and if you major in science, is it better to get the letter of rec from a science teacher or from any teacher?
Huh. I'm coming to it, but I'm going to answer your question. I am applying early. I am applying to a science program early, and I need a letter of recommendation. Logically, who would I want to have write that letter of recommendation? The history teacher? The English teacher? What would make the most sense? Science teacher. So yes, I would want it from the science teacher. Having said that, if the directions that they give me say, we want letters of recommendation and none of them should be from science teachers, because we want to have a sense, then I would do that. But generally speaking, part of the story is the things that I love so much that my teachers can write about them. So it generally follows. This, you hear this all the time, reach, target, safety. Do you know what the big problem is with this? How many people wake up and go, woo, got into my safety school. Yeah, nailed it. Vermont said yes. Oh, you laughed. That's what my son did. My son's safety school was the University of Vermont. Now let me describe what a safety school is like. He applied on a Wednesday. On Friday, they accepted him. And on Monday, they offered him a scholarship. But you know what's cool about that? Within 48 hours, someone had said yes and then chased and offered money. Psychologically, it's really cool, right? But people who look at safety schools, so say, why am I wasting my time? I'm not that excited. I'm never going to go. And it orients them towards reach because we're trained. Reach, strive, grab. It's the American way. It's a horrible nomenclature. It's depressing. So I would reorient that. And I would look at math. There are three kinds of schools. Highly unlikely, possible, likely. They're going to send the limousine. Highly unlikely, possible, likely. Now apply that to life. Time to go to the prom. These are the options. These 8, highly unlikely. There are very few humans on this planet who do this. You? No. You? No. You? No. You? No. Like, we're not going to do that. Now there's the gimme. You? Shall we? Yeah, I mean, like, that's what people are going to do. Colleges, reorient yourself to highly unlikely, possible, likely. There's nothing wrong with you applying to and attending a school that wants you. Nothing wrong with that. There are people in this place where the likely school is UCLA. They're just that academically talented. And it remains highly unlikely that Princeton is going to say yes. So it's simple. Any school where the admit rate is less than 20% is highly unlikely. 20 to 35% is generally possible. Over 40% moves into the likely category. I mean, there are some fluctuations. They don't hide their admit rates. Google any school admit rate, it's there. And balance your list. For every 4 schools you apply to, 1 that is highly unlikely, 2 that are possible, and 1 that is likely. So if you're applying to 8 schools, 2 highly unlikely, what does highly unlikely mean? No. I just didn't want to get up in front of you and say no, maybe, and yes. That's depressing. Highly unlikely as admissions speak for no. Go for it. I don't mind. Jody doesn't mind. We don't mind. It's just like, how many times do you want to hear no before you take it personally? If you are one of those incredibly talented students, I might apply to one more highly unlikely school. Might. But for most of us in this room, highly unlikely, 2 possibles, 1 likely. All of the work that you should do is around the schools that are possible. That's probably the best advice I'm going to give you today. Orient the list to math, not to feelings. Davis, you have a 3.5 GPA. What just happened in the Davis category? You're highly unlikely. It took 5% of people with less than a 3.7. By definition, that is highly unlikely. The math never lies. It doesn't make you a lousy human. It doesn't make you a terrible student. It just means the math is not in your favor. Very Hunger Games. Questions back there? What do you got? Over here. Go.
If you're using the math and probability, and it's very unlikely that you would get into the highly unlikely, why bother?
First of all, excellent voice projection. The question. They're going to say no. Why should I bother? My answer is not mathematical. How dare you not dream at 17? We go for it. This is how we're wired. No one gets to say absolutely no. It doesn't work in your household. Your parents come to you and say, you may not do this. It just got a hell of a lot more attractive. You get to dream. I just don't want it to be a permanent state of being. There's a couple of schools, like, the story matters. That person over there about the art, right? I could look at the math all day long, but if the art professor loves her, the art professor loves him, that can happen. It remains highly unlikely. But this is not a bank loan. It is not a pure exercise in math. I'm looking at this as a human, and that is an unknown variable. So yeah, you always go for it. You just don't go for it a lot. That's irrational. Jody, do you want to add to that, or am I on the right track? Oh, phew. I think I promised that you got to go next, then you. Go.
For the early action, what is the due date for those early?
What is the due date for early action? Wouldn't it be great if I could give you one straight answer? It depends. Generally, some are November 1st, some are November 15th, some are November 30th, generally November 15th. State schools generally don't have early action. Like the UC's is November 1st, November 30th.
And if you choose not to do that, when do you have to?
Again, it depends. Most schools you probably want to apply to by the end of November, but some you can apply to as late as the end of January.
Okay.
Over here.
What if you have a strong SAT, but your grades are not as
You have a strong SAT and your grades are not as good. Here are 2 things that will tell me. 1, you're probably male, and 2, you're smart and lazy. Ooh, did I get that right? Now, by the way, that doesn't bother me. So, as a school, sometimes I'm looking for potential. I'm looking for my diamonds in the rough. And a test score can say, that kid's got talent. As he matures, he's going to be amazing. And they'll look closely at second semester junior year and first semester senior year to see, has he hit the gear known as engage? Yale's not going to do that. They don't have to. But schools that might say no could be persuaded to say yes if they see a kid with a high test score who's hitting overdrive second semester junior year, first semester senior year. It's a very male profile. Does that answer your question? All right, next one. Yeah. 2 bigger question. What do I think about out-of-state colleges? I think it is sort of part and parcel of your search for the kinds of schools that you want. I think once you discover a culture of a school that you like, this is very much part of your job to figure out which ones are highly unlikely, which ones are possible, and which ones are likely. I mean, I'm all about finding schools that fit kids, and I'm also all about, look, colleges are about choice. Where do you want to go, and how much do you want to pay? That combination often dictates the final answer. But along the way, I'll apply to a lot of different places. I'll kiss a lot of frogs. And that's perfectly okay. I don't have to be exact. Something you should know. Scholarship money from out-of-state schools is almost entirely linked to test scores. Merit-based money, not financial aid, merit-based money for out-of-state schools is almost entirely linked to test scores. I wish that was not true, but it is a true statement. This is something that everyone screws up. With that kind of lead-in, you're going to love the fact that I'm picking on you. Activities, you got a bunch. What's your favorite activity? You play the piano. So if I said, list your activity, how would you list it? Plays the piano, what else would you put down? No, about the piano, what else would you put down about the piano? Like when you started it, when you finished it? So that's normal, thank you. Here's what people do with activities. They list activities in the order of what they think will impress the admissions people the most and or how long they have done it. So they'll put down piano from 2004 to 2017. Because you're like out of the womb playing, Tchaikovsky. So here's what you should do with activities. 1, always list first the one you cannot live without. Doesn't matter how long you've done it. Doesn't matter how impressive it is. That's the first one you list. The one that if you took it away from me today, I would be miserable because you took this away from me. It could be something you've only done for 3 months. It is the thing that you love the most. That goes first. The one you love the second most goes second. It's like polygamy, right? Just order them that way. It's hard to work polygamy into a college admissions speech. There should be extra points for that. So here's why this works. What do you think the kid is going to write the essay about? Something they've done for a long time or something they love? Always about the thing they love. You're looking for consistency in the story. I played piano for 13 years. I played it so much I have learned to actually hate it. But French, oh my God, I love this, and off you go. There's a story there. There's always about the story. So first you list the activity that means the most. And they give you that little space next to it, it's usually about tweet number of characters. Most people say, Vice President, 2 years. No. Use that space to tell people how much you love the activity. I love the piano. It's weird. I have a relationship with piano that borders on the romantic. My poor parents. Put your personality next to the activities. It's free space that you can use to show who you are as an individual. And the people in admissions will read that and learn more about you. They don't need to know you did this for 5 years or 10 minutes. It doesn't matter. They're going to assume that the order you have listed them in is the order of the importance. So you have played varsity soccer every year for 3 years. And your senior year, you decide to drop it because you hate it. Drop it. Do what you love. Do what engages you. I'm not here to punish you. That's what adulthood is for. You get to do the things you love and do them more frequently. Now, there's a lot in that. So again, I'll pause. Questions over here? Middle. Side. Go.
You mentioned that engineering is very competitive. What other majors are very competitive?
What other majors are very competitive? It depends upon the school. Traditionally, engineering is competitive. Traditionally, nursing is competitive. Physical therapy is competitive. International business is competitive. Some pre-med programs are competitive. Computer science is almost always competitive. But each school has a thing, and usually their thing is deeply competitive within their school. So Carnegie Mellon Industrial Design is very competitive. At Cal Poly San Luis Obispo, architecture is very competitive. Go.
How do you find the school's thing?
How do you find what?
The school's thing. Like, you know all the things.
So I think it's a fair question. How do you find the school's thing? Right? It won't be on their website. Their website's very, very generic in terms of how they talk about it. There's a book I really like. It's written by my former boss at the Princeton Review. The Princeton Review Best Colleges. You don't even have to buy it. On their website, everything on that's free. Just plug in the name of the college. The Princeton Review, what they do is they survey the students. The students will tell you what the thing is. There's another website I like called Unigo, U-N-I-G-O. Students are pretty honest about their schools. They'll give you a sense of what the culture of the place is like. And then the third piece of reference, which you would have to buy, is the Fiske Guide. F like Frank, I-S-K-E. And that tells you the academic situations that colleges like and want the most. That's what tells you the academic culture of the school. But ultimately, this is what the research is about. What do they value? What do they like? And that's a holistic approach. It's far, far more than just sort of looking on their website. It's talking to students who go there. That's when you sort of figure out the culture of the place. Hey, you know what? I had promised you, I'm over the hour mark. My voice is still going. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to stop. Those of you who wish to leave are more than welcome to do so. And then I will continue to sort of answer questions and go through things. By the way, I promised you this. The essay stuff, you'll see later. I have all of the websites for where you can find various college applications. That's my email. Anyone who wants this, I am happy to email to them the complete deck. I covered the key questions that I wanted to cover. The rest of the stuff was there in case I ran out of time. Fortunately, you do not let me have that happen. You know, the important things about UCs, early applications, majors or not majors, the way that you want to go from highly unlikely to possible to likely, that was the key stuff I wanted you to be aware of. That's the level set. The pieces you want to do next, how do you write a great essay? Your essay is your interview in the sun. It is where you reveal who you are. That is an incredibly important thing to get right. And that, and a tease, is what the next session is about. And if you enjoyed this, Allison, who is the guest speaker, will be even more impressive and even better. She's married to the assistant principal here, Mr. Lepore. So if she's terrible, you can tell him that. Given the fact that he's 6'8", I'm sure that will end well for you. So there it is. Those of you who wish to abandon, go forth, enjoy the evening. Those of you who wish to remain and ask questions, please do so. And thank you very much for having me. All right, gang. Here we go. My first question. What are my thoughts on USC? Now, I went to UCLA. How could you possibly, thank you, how could you possibly expect me to say something nice about USC? So, USC is one of those schools that has really, really changed and evolved over the years. You go back to the USC of the late 70s and early 80s, their admission standards where you had a pulse and a checkbook. It took everyone, particularly kids out of Orange County. This was their patch. USC is now one of the hardest schools in the country to get into. Their admit rate last year was 17%. I know the director of admissions there, Kirk Brennan, and the thing that has been so painful for him is that during his time there, the admit rate's gone from 45% to 16, 17%. This means that USC is a highly unlikely school. That's just where it is. USC has really strong programs across the board. If I was to pick one that I find to be particularly extraordinary, it's their entrepreneurship program. Their business programs are really good, but there are no weak spots left in USC's game. They are a top-class institution, worthy, I think, of standing next to any school in the country. And I went to UCLA, so you know that hurt, right? Because people care about math. USC will expect you to be at the same level of student as you would be to get into Berkeley. Their average SAT score is now around 1440. You had a question. Oh, what a fantastic question. All right, I have a thing in mind that I want to do. Should I go to a school that is competitive in what I want to do, or should I go to just a generic school? So here's what's so interesting about that question. Where do you think she'd be happier? My guess is you're going to be happier at the school that loves what you love. So in general, what will probably happen is, let's say you just love science, and the school that you're looking to is highly competitive around science. It means they value science. And the more they value the thing that you love, the more likely they are to accept you. And the more likely you are to be happy once you get there. So what will probably happen is the thing that you love, that they're deeply competitive in, creates a fit, and it increases your likelihood of getting in. Did I answer that question or not? Yeah. So you would think on the surface it wouldn't matter, but that story always matters. And that fit between the kid and the institution resonates. Something you guys should know, and I mentioned it before, the average age of people who are doing the admissions review is 24. So if I may ask, how old are you? So you are writing to yourself 8 years from now. Think about that. It's kind of just a slightly older version of you with more hair. Yes, even more. Right? So that's sort of how the game is played. Go.
The 1440 SAT, what is that equivalent to, like, in the ACT?
33.
33?
Like, can we take out the numbers and just use an adjective? Obscene. Like, there's no sense of humor. You know why I say highly unlikely? Because the things they want our kids to do aren't reasonable, right? So you sort of like are in this ridiculous rat race, and the lady over here asked the question earlier, we're not just competing with American kids. We have Chinese kids, Brazilian kids, Russian kids, Indian kids, Korean kids. It's a global construct, right? That's why highly unlikely means that, because somebody somewhere got 1540. Like, go away. So that's why I try and bring balance and sanity into the process. There's so many colleges that do amazing jobs. America has the best college system on the planet. It's really, really strong. We just get obsessed with certain names. Yeah.
I'm interested in biomedical engineering.
That will be impacted, biomed engineering.
And for a lot of schools, they don't have that as an undergrad major. So I'm looking to go to graduate school for biomedical engineering.
Okay.
So for my undergrad major, would I apply to a school of engineering or a school of
So a very specific question. Ultimately, I'm going to be a biomedical engineer. That's a graduate program. So what should I do as an undergrad? I would pick a major that you really, really can dig into and enjoy, that is peripheral to the major you want. So arguably, I'd probably be more on the bio or chemistry side of the equation than I would be on the engineering side. Because if you think about it, it's the engineering that is secondary and the science that is primary. But that's a student who might also choose to go in pre-med or undergrad and dabble. Did I answer your question?
Yes.
Do you have one? You flinched. Go. Yeah.
Okay, this is maybe a bizarre question.
I like bizarre.
Okay, this is my third child going into college.
Yep.
And do they get any colleges getting discounts knowing that we have two other kids still in college?
This is not a bizarre question. The lady's question is, I like to have lots of children. Really close to one another, no time off. And because of this planning, I have 3 in college at the same time. Okay. Actually, that will matter. So I'm going to have 2 kids in college at the same time. Here's what happens. When you fill out the FAFSA, and it begins there, the FAFSA, they will come to you and they will say, here is your expected family contribution. Let's pretend that's an obscenely high number. Let's pretend that's $70,000. That's not per kid. It's expected family contribution. So if the first kid's college costs $50,000 a year, and the second kid's college costs $50,000 a year, that's $100 grand. Your expected family contribution is $70,000. That means the second kid will get $30,000 off. So the colleges don't provide the discount. The system provides the discount that colleges then can choose to use however they see fit. So the kid in graduate school does not apply to the formula. They're in a different bucket. But the two who are in college at the same time, the short answer is fill out FAFSA. You'll be pleasantly surprised. Not a bizarre question. Yes?
We've received some emails from colleges for priority application. I have an athlete, so and they're waiving the fee and waiving essays and stuff. Is that the same as the early admission, that if he were to apply that he would have to choose that, or is that?
So it is not the same as early admission, where if he applies that he has to choose that school. What it is brilliant marketing. Right? It is to get an athlete in the door and boost the application numbers. When you boost application numbers, you boost your rankings. So this is a rankings move, but it makes the kid feel great. By the way, you're going to love this one. The odds of being admitted from a priority application are exactly the same as the odds of being admitted from a regular application. They're not treated differently.
So the only advantage is the fee waiver?
Yeah, it's free. And there's a second advantage. Who doesn't feel good about that? They want me, they like me, they really, really like me. I love that piece, but in terms of the mechanics, no difference. You have one, madame, then I'll get the gentleman in blue, then the lady in red. Go.
So once you get into college, with numbers, kids are taking 10 AP classes and they have 1,500 SATs. What, the average student, how do they survive? Can they make the classes? Can they do the curriculum?
Oh, this one's interesting. So we have these kids who are hyper-focused, and then they're sort of competing with normal students. So this is what's fascinating.
What the normal students, can they compete?
Yeah, so this is what's fascinating. There's no correlation between the number of AP kids a kid takes and their graduation rate from college. None. So this will surprise you. What is the number one factor that determines whether a kid will graduate from a college or not? Number one, average family income. That's number one. Number two, are they part of AVID? Kids who take AVID have one of the highest graduation rates of any student group out there. They graduate at a higher rate than class valedictorians. And that's not an AP curriculum. What they have is grit. APs measure academic talent. Grit and income measure whether you sort of get out of college. Now, I don't know what the respective GPAs are. I've never seen that data, but they don't have a problem competing regular kids, because most kids in college, madame, are definitionally regular. The largest part of the bell curve is the piece in the middle. That is the bulk of kids in college. I think the final point, and this is not at all a surprise, kids who gave their all in high school, they tend to breathe when they get to college, right? And they kind of reinvent themselves. They don't want to be that kid anymore, and so they tend to take a chill pill. That's what you see. Gentleman in blue, lady in red, then you. Go.
I don't know if this makes sense. This question makes sense, because we applied for University of Nevada, Las Vegas.
Yeah.
And it seems like it's almost too good to be true. They say that you have to apply before November 1st.
Yeah.
They give you an answer 2 weeks later,
Yeah.
2 weeks to a month later, and then they don't, even if they don't care about your SAT score, they just want you to take it. They give you money for that, just for taking it.
Yes.
And then your FAFSA, they don't even care if it's completed. They just want you to say you did it.
Yes.
And turn it in. Is that sort of too good to be true?
No. They want kids, particularly out-of-state kids. They don't have enough of them. They want applications. They want to fill their ranks. Most kids aren't wanting to go to UNLV unless it's their hotel program. Parents have a lot of concerns about their kids living in Sin City, blah, 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 blah. So all of these are the competition matrix working in favor of your kids. Stanford doesn't have to do this, so they don't. So there's nothing about this that is too good to be true. This is my point earlier. Most colleges want kids. A select few are like, go away, you're like gnats at Christmas picnic, you're bothering me, right? But most colleges, they'll roll out the red carpet. Priority applications, my kid's Vermont story, your UNLV story. They don't give a you-know-what as to whether... Pardon?
They give you an answer, because most schools, they say you gotta wait till...
I can be admitted on the same day at Cal State Fullerton. I can walk on campus, fill out the form, and they'll go yes or no while I am standing there. Yeah, all of this stress is self-induced. I mean, it's great for my business. It's just not great for kids. Lady in red, then you. Go.
Okay, so what if you have like a strong GPA, but your SAT, ACT test scores aren't as strong?
Question. The question is great grades, good curriculum, decent test scores, but not earth-shattering. What does that mean? That means that 99% of the colleges in the country, they're going to say yes, and you know the 1% will say no. By the way, this will make you feel better. You want to go to Harvard. Straight A's, AP everything, IB everything, perfect kid, 1550 SAT. Same kid, 1450 SAT. Same kid, 1350 SAT. The admit rate's the same for all of them. It's not the test scores. It's freaking Harvard. With no sense of humor. With highly unlikely meaning, no. But apply anyway. So your test scores are not killing you there. That's just the Harvard thing. Does that answer your question? Go.
One of my schools has an alumni interview as part of the application process. How much is that going to affect the application?
The question, my school offers an alumni interview as part of the process. How much does that affect the application? I'm going to have to answer question with a question. What school is it? At Georgetown or highly competitive schools in the unlikely category, the alumni interviews, which you have to do, have nothing to do with admissions at all. They are a way to keep the alumni happy and donating to the school. It's about the alumni, it's not about you, the student. Now, what sort of sucks about this? Like, an alumni could say, I hated her, don't take her. And that would be a bad thing. They could say, she is the second coming of the Messiah, Georgetown. Right? I actually saw her walk on water, and it would make no difference. It's all about keeping the alumni happy. So don't put too much stress on yourself on that particular thing. Pardon? 5 more minutes, go. Thank you. Are you more likely to be accepted to a college if you visit the school and take one of their tours? So this is called demonstrated interest. The more you demonstrate interest at schools that are not insanely popular, the more likely they are to take you. It's not a Yale thing. It's not a Princeton thing. It's not a UCLA thing. It's not a USC thing. It would be a Chapman thing. It would be a University of Laverne thing. It would be a Whittier thing. Absolutely. Because that demonstrated interest means, oh, I got a good chance of getting this kid. That UNLV thing that you talked about is demonstrated interest. You applied, and you filled out the forms, and you followed the directions. You're demonstrating interest. Before November 1st, I want. Demonstrated interest matters at non-elite schools. Give me a name of the school that you care about. Michigan, demonstrated interest does not matter. It's Michigan. Give me another school. Chapman, it'll matter. Large state schools, they don't care. Wisconsin won't care. Ohio State won't care. They don't even track it. But Miami of Ohio would look. Kalamazoo would look. I swear it's in Michigan. Go. There's a night on financial aid that is better suited to this. WUI is the Western Undergraduate Exchange. It is schools that will honor their in-state prices for out-of-state residents. We honor, so like for example, Oregon State. If you apply from California to Oregon State, they're a WUI school. They'll charge you in-state prices. Most schools that are big brands, like University of Washington, University of Arizona, are not part of WUI, but WUI is, that's how it works. Idaho is part of WUI. Boise State, which is in Idaho, right? So WUI is a thing. You ever follow? Yeah, if they accept you and you apply for WUI, you get the Pardon? Yes, the calculation they use to charge you. Go. Yeah. Oh, what a good question. You apply early action and they deny you. Can you reapply? No. Right? So what will normally happen is they'll defer you. They'll go, okay, you're a terrible candidate. They'll say no right away. Bye, go away. You're a great candidate. They say yes right away. Come on down. But most kids, they defer. They go, we're not ready to say yes or no, and they automatically put you into the regular admit pool. But if they say no, you're done. Got it?
We have time for two more.
Two more. You got one of them.
I moved to the U.S. last year, and when I'm applying to like colleges like UCs or any private schools, would I be considered in the international pool of kids, or would I be a regular like in-state or out-of-state?
This is a great question, Jody. I moved here a year ago. I'm going to Los Alamitos High School. Will I be applying as an international kid or as a U.S. kid?
Yes, but let your
I think if you're graduating out of an American high school, you get to apply as an American student. You could also choose to submit a TOEFL. I just don't know the answer to that question. So I think that one is... Yeah, but I think she's coming into her second year as a senior. She did one already, I think. But that's it's such a necessary question to know the answer to. Also, if you do your research, there might be schools where you're being at a huge advantage being an international applicant. Like I mentioned one earlier, Chapman loves international students, part of their gigs. I think that's part of your homework. Last one, go. Any correlation between early action and scholarship money? Early action, they don't penalize you on the scholarship side. And in early action, there's enough of a marriage there that they wouldn't accept you unless they wanted you to go, right? So my guess is they would probably be fairly aggressive with merit-based money because they want you to attend. And since early action is not binding, that additional inducement, I think, is part of the package. Early decision that is binding limits you. Early action, I think, is sort of the first step in a longer dance. I am thrashed. Go away.